What an incredible night. Yesterday, millions of people across Europe stopped what they were doing and looked up. From Greenland to Iceland, Spain and all across Europe, the moon moved in front of the sun. And for some people, day literally turned into night. So let's take a quick trip across Europe and see what happened. And then I will tell you about my own slightly chaotic eclipse adventure here in Switzerland. Because trust me, I was not prepared for this. Let's start in Reykjavik. Thousands of eclipse chasers had traveled to Iceland, hoping for one of the most spectacular astronomical events imaginable. There was just one problem: Icelandic weather. Clouds covered much of Reykjavik, but amazingly, the eclipse still delivered. As totality approached, the light collapsed, the landscape darkened, and even through the clouds, people experienced that extraordinary moment when the sun disappeared. Icelandic broadcaster RUV later described the eclipse as far more impressive than expected despite the clouds. And in some places, breaks in the cloud allowed people to glimpse the eclipsed sun. Imagine traveling the whole way to Iceland and then spending the final minutes staring nervously at a cloud. That's eclipse chasing. This was a completely different story. Across large parts of Spain, the skies were spectacular. Millions of people gathered in cities, on beaches, mountains and viewpoints. And one of the most incredible places was Mallorca. There the eclipse happened just before sunset. The sun was only a few degrees above the horizon, and that created some absolutely spectacular images. A huge dark moon surrounded by the solar corona, hanging just above the Mediterranean. Some observers described the experience simply as unforgettable. Others said they cried when totality arrived. And looking at those pictures, I understand why. Although even on Mallorca, eclipse chasing remained a lottery. At some locations, clouds appeared literally at the moment of totality. Imagine that. Perfect weather all day, and then one cloud arrives during the most important minute. That hurts. Here in Zurich we didn't get totality, but we got something pretty spectacular. More than 90% of the sun disappeared across much of Switzerland. And the weather? Absolutely incredible. Clear blue skies, warm temperatures, perfect summer conditions. People gathered on hills, at observatories, on mountain tops and besides lakes. There were eclipse events at observatories and planetariums across the country. And in Zurich, the demand for solar eclipse glasses became so crazy that people were literally standing in huge queues trying to get them. Which brings me to my eclipse adventure. I have to admit something. I think I underestimated this eclipse. I kept thinking, it's only around 91% here, it's not totality. And if this had been a total solar eclipse, I probably would have started preparing weeks ago. Instead, I decided basically at the last minute. The day before, I had been at Lake Hallwil, at the Strandbad in Esch, Luzern. And I suddenly thought, this is perfect. Open western horizon, beautiful lake, sunset, and I could bring my Celestron telescope. Great idea, there was only one problem. Actually, there were several. The next day I pulled out my telescope and I realized I had no working battery. No battery means no tracking. Okay, annoying but manageable. Then I looked at my eyepieces and realized I was missing the visual back. That little adapter connects my smaller eyepieces to the telescope. Without it, I couldn't use the lower magnification I needed. And then came problem number 3. Eclipse glasses. We didn't have any. I actually still had one pair from the legendary European total eclipse of August 11th, 1999. Somewhere. But after 27 years, I had absolutely no idea where it was. At this point, my brilliant eclipse plan was falling apart. And this is where my wife basically saved the entire evening. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just a few hours before the eclipse, she jumped into the car and drove all the way to downtown Zurich. Battery for the telescope? Found. Visual back? Found. Eclipse glasses? That was more difficult. She went to Foto zum Stein and discovered a queue of what looked like around 200 meters for eclipse glasses. It looked more like an Apple store on the morning of a new iPhone launch. After about 15 minutes she realized this is going nowhere. So she left, and somehow she managed to find 2 Eclipse glasses on tutti. Battery, adapter, glasses, mission accomplished. And she made it back just in time. So before anything else, thanks to my wife. Without her, this video will probably be called How I Completely Missed the Solar Eclipse. At around 7 o'clock we arrived at the Strandbad in Ash. I immediately set up the Celestron, mounted the solar filter, installed everything, pointed the telescope toward the sun, and there it was. The moon was already moving across the solar disk. And then something happened that I had secretly hoped would happen. The telescope became the star of the evening. People started coming over. Can I have a look? What can you see? Can my kids look through it? And suddenly there was almost a little queue forming around the telescope. Over the course of the evening I would estimate 60 or 70 people looked through it. Kids, parents, couples, people I'd never met before. And that was probably my favorite part of the entire evening. My kids were there, my wife was there. The weather was perfect, Lake Hallwyl was beautiful, the sun slowly disappeared behind the moon, and I spent the evening talking with complete strangers about astronomy, SpaceX, the sun, the moon and space. And it reminded me of something. Astronomy has this incredible ability to bring people together. For an hour nobody cared about politics, nobody cared about work, nobody cared about their phone. Everybody was simply looking up. And I loved it. Because yesterday gave me the eclipse bug. And fortunately we don't have to wait very long. Because the next solar eclipse is already coming. And this one is going to be an absolute monster. The path of totality crosses southern Spain, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen and parts of the Indian Ocean. At the point of maximum eclipse, totality will last 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Think about that. Yesterday's maximum totality was around 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Next year, more than 6 minutes. That is extraordinary. If you want the easiest European option, look at southern Spain. Tarifa gets roughly 4.5 minutes of totality. Gibraltar roughly the same. Malaga gets around 2 minutes. Or across the Strait of Gibraltar and Tangier in Morocco, they get almost 5 minutes. But if you want the ultimate eclipse experience, there is one place everybody is talking about: Luxor, Egypt. Imagine this: the temples, the Nile, the Valley of Kings, desert skies, and above you, the sun disappears for more than 6 minutes. There's only one problem. Plenty of people will have the same idea. Hotels and eclipse tours in Luxor are already filling up, and some are already completely sold out. And we're still almost a year away. So if yesterday gave you the eclipse bug too, don't do what I did. Don't start preparing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, start now. And 2027 is only the beginning. January 2028. A spectacular ring of fire eclipse crosses South Africa, Portugal and Spain. July 2028. Another total eclipse crosses Australia and New Zealand. 2030. We get another annular eclipse across Africa, Southern Europe and Asia. And later that same year, another total eclipse across Southern Africa and Australia. Then come total eclipses across Alaska and Russia in 2033. China and Korea and Japan in 2035. Australia and New Zealand in 2037 and 2038. Antarctica in 2039, Africa in 2041, Southeast Asia in 2042, Russia in 2043, and Greenland, Canada and the United States in 2044. Then, August 12, 2045, another gigantic total eclipse crosses the United States, the Caribbean and South Africa. Again, more than 6 minutes of totality. There are plenty of eclipse adventures waiting for us. There is one final question. When do we finally get totality here in Switzerland? Not 91%, not 95%, not even 99%, no, 100%. Day becomes night, stars appear, and the solar corona becomes visible. Well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news, it's coming. The bad news, September 3rd, 2081. The path of totality will cross straight through Switzerland. Basel, Bern, Zurich, St. Gallen, all inside the path. Zurich should get almost 4 minutes of totality. There is only one slight problem. I'll be 103 years old. So, I'll do my best, but I think I will go to Spain next year instead. Yesterday reminded me why I fell in love with astronomy as a kid. You can read about eclipses, you can watch them on YouTube, you can see incredible photographs. But standing outside with your family, with dozens of complete strangers, watching the moon slowly move across the sun, that's different. For a moment, millions of people across Europe were doing exactly the same thing. They stopped, they looked up, and they watched our little corner of the universe put on a show. And that is what astronomy is all about. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to Alex SpaceX Talks, SpaceX, Astronomy, the new space economy, and humanity's next giant step into space. And after yesterday, I can already promise you one thing. August 2nd, 2027, I'll be ready.